2 words changed everything. Successor trustee. I was standing in my own kitchen, washing dishes from Richard's funeral reception, still in my black dress, still moving like my body was on autopilot, when I heard my son David speaking to his wife Jennifer in the next room. They thought the running water would cover their voices. "Monday morning," David said. 10 o'clock? The attorney wants the trustee papers signed. Jennifer didn't lower her voice. She didn't have to. "Don't over-explain it," she said. "Just tell her it's routine. She won't read a thing right now." "And after that," David replied, "we can get the house paperwork move-in. March 15th. Jennifer made a small sound, almost a laugh. "And the court filing on Friday makes the money part clean." I turned off the faucet. The silence that followed felt louder than the water ever had. For 3 weeks they'd been so helpful. David handled the funeral arrangements while I sat in a fog I couldn't climb out of. Jennifer organized the reception, managed the flowers, answered calls. They'd moved into my house temporarily, they said, just until the paperwork settled. I told myself it was love. I told myself this was what family did when a mother couldn't think straight. But standing there with soap suds on my hands, I finally understood what they were really doing. They weren't helping me manage Richard's estate. They were positioning themselves to take it. 3 deadlines, a Monday signature, a Friday filing, a March 15th finish line. If you've ever felt family help slowly becoming something else, something that makes you smaller inside your own life, stay with me. Because sometimes the hands that promise to steady you are the same hands turning the key in your lock. I had 3 days before they tried to make it official, but 3 days felt like a lifetime when I realized how long they'd been planning this. Let me tell you how 42 years of marriage got dismantled, one helpful gesture at a time. Richard died on a Tuesday in November. Heart attack at 71, sudden, no warning. I was still wearing his favorite blue sweater when David showed up at the hospital. He took charge immediately, which felt like a blessing when I couldn't even remember my own phone number. "Mom, don't worry about any of the arrangements. I've got everything handled." He did handle everything. The funeral home, the death certificates, the insurance claims. I trusted him then. He was my son, stepping up when his father couldn't. But 3 weeks later, when the credit card bills started arriving, I noticed something strange. The funeral home invoice, the catering, even the flowers. Everything was billed to David's address, not mine. "Why are these coming to your house?" I asked him. "Oh, I just had them send everything to me. Easier to coordinate." That was my first clue, but grief makes you stupid about details. By Christmas, Jennifer was talking about simplifying my finances. She made it sound so reasonable, sitting at my kitchen table with her laptop and printed spreadsheets. "You shouldn't have to manage 6 different accounts, Mom. Let's consolidate everything into one joint account for convenience." I trusted her then. She was an accountant, after all, and I'd never been good with numbers. Richard always handled the banking, but 2 weeks after I signed the paperwork, I stopped at the ATM to get cash for groceries. The receipt showed a withdrawal I hadn't made, $400 at Riverside Mall, the day before. "Jennifer, there's a mistake on my statement." "Oh, that was me. I needed some cash for David's Christmas bonus. I'll put it back." She never did put it back. And that's when I started watching the numbers more carefully. By February, they'd convinced me to have my mail forwarded to their house. Jennifer presented it as another kindness, another burden lifted from my shoulders. "You keep missing important documents, Mom. Let us handle your mail. We'll sort through everything and bring you what matters." I trusted them then. Missing mail was embarrassing, and I had been distracted, forgetting to check the mailbox some days. But after 2 weeks, I realized I wasn't getting any bank notices anymore. No statements, no alerts, nothing. "Where are my bank statements?" I asked David. "We switched you to paperless, much more environmentally friendly." "But I never asked for paperless." "Mom, you're overthinking this. We're helping you modernize." What they were really doing was making me invisible to my own money. I started living in a paperless prison I didn't know existed. But the mail wasn't enough. They needed control over who I talked to as well. In March, when my friend Ruth called to check on me, Jennifer intercepted the call. "Oh, Ruth, Mom's having a hard time with visitors right now. She's still very fragile. Maybe give her some space." I found out about this 3 days later when Ruth ran into me at the grocery store. "Honey, I've been worried sick. Every time I call, Jennifer says you're not up for talking." "I never said that." "She said you were having anxiety attacks, didn't want to be overwhelmed with social obligations. I trusted them then, or wanted to, because admitting they were screening my calls meant admitting my own son was treating me like a child." But when I got home, I picked up the phone to call Ruth back. The line was dead for 3 seconds before David's voice came on. "Mom, who are you calling?" "Just Ruth." "Maybe that's not the best idea right now. You've been so emotional lately." He was monitoring my phone calls. My house was full of people who claimed to love me, but I'd never felt more alone. That's when the strange details started adding up. Billing addresses that weren't mine. ATM withdrawals I didn't make. Bank statements that disappeared. Phone calls that got filtered. Each incident was small enough to rationalize, normal enough to dismiss as grief brain or aging or stress. But when you line them up together, they tell a different story. They tell the story of a woman being systematically erased from her own life, one helpful gesture at a time. I should have seen it sooner. I should have asked more questions. But grief is a fog that makes you grateful for any hand extended, even when that hand is already reaching for your wallet. By spring, I had become a passenger in my own life. David and Jennifer made every decision: where I went, who I saw, what bills got paid, which mail was important enough for me to see. I was the owner of everything and the controller of nothing. What they hadn't counted on was Richard's voice reaching me from beyond the grave through 2 words I overheard in my kitchen: successor trustee. Because apparently, even dead husbands can still protect their wives. But things didn't stop there. Once they knew I was getting suspicious, they moved faster. The Tuesday after I confronted Jennifer about the ATM withdrawal, she showed up at my house with a woman I'd never seen before, a sharp-dressed blonde in her 40s with a tablet and a measuring tape. "Mom, this is Christine Valdez from Morrison Realty. I mentioned you might be interested in downsizing." I never said anything about downsizing. "You've been talking about how the house feels too big since Dad died," Jennifer said smoothly, lying right to my face. Christine specializes in properties for seniors transitioning to assisted living. The word assisted living hit me like a physical blow, but Jennifer was already walking Christine through my living room like she owned the place, pointing out the crown molding Richard had installed by hand, the hardwood floors we'd refinished together 3 summers ago. "Beautiful bones," Christine was saying, typing rapid notes. "With the spring market heating up, I'd say we're looking at 470, maybe 480,000, but you have to move fast." "How fast?" Jennifer asked. "List it by March 15th. We'll have multiple offers by the weekend." March 15th, 3 weeks away. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "We're just exploring options," I said quickly. But Christine was already scheduling showings. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, 9 a.m., noon, and 3 p.m. work. I'll need access to all rooms. "Perfect," Jennifer said without looking at me. "We'll make sure the house is staged. Mom, you might want to pack up personal items. Buyers like to envision their own belongings. I stood there watching strangers plan the sale of my home like I wasn't even in the room. 3 showings next week for my own house. The next morning, David called before I'd even finished my coffee. His tone was different, more formal, like he was reading from a script. "Mom, we need to talk about your legal situation." "What legal situation?" "Jennifer's been researching guardianship options for someone your age, especially with the memory issues you've been having." "I don't have memory issues." "Mom, you forgot to pay the electric bill twice last month. You missed your doctor's appointment, then called the office asking why they canceled. You can't remember where you put your checkbook." Every accusation landed like a carefully aimed slap. Yes, I'd been distracted since Richard died. But that wasn't cognitive decline. That was what happens when your brain keeps trying to call out to someone who will never answer again. Those are normal grief responses. Can you? Because Jennifer thinks guardianship might be necessary. Just temporarily. It's not a punishment, it's protection. Protection from what? From making financial decisions that could hurt you. From people who might try to take advantage. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. And who would be my guardian? We would, Jennifer and me, to keep things simple, keep it in the family. There was that word again. Simple. Everything they did was to keep things simple, simple for them to control my life. I don't need a guardian. Mom, the appointment's already scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. Judge Henderson's chambers. The judge just wants to make sure you're competent to handle your finances. If you pass, no guardianship. If you don't, he let that sentence hang like a sword. The appointment was set for Friday, with or without me, but the worst was yet to come. That afternoon, I drove to First National Bank to get copies of my statements. I needed to see what Jennifer and David had been doing with my money. The teller, a young woman with kind eyes, pulled up my account and frowned at her screen. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Morrison. I can't release those statements. They're my accounts." "I understand, but the accounts have been flagged for family financial management. Any requests need to go through the designated family contact." "Who's the designated contact?" "Jennifer Morrison. She's listed as your financial power of attorney. Would you like me to call her?" "Financial power of attorney? I never signed anything giving Jennifer power of attorney." "No, that's fine," I said. I walked back to my car on shaking legs. Jennifer had convinced the bank she was authorized to manage my finances. I couldn't even get a simple account balance without her permission. At home, I tried logging into my online banking. Password incorrect. I tried again with the password I'd used for 3 years. Same message. I called customer service. After 20 minutes on hold, a representative explained that the account holder had requested a security update in February. All password resets have to be verified through the designated emergency contact phone number. What's the emergency contact number? I'm showing a number ending in 4789, Jennifer's cell phone. They'd hijacked my customer service access too. I was locked out of my own financial life completely. Even my own money required their permission now. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, adding up the deadlines, closing in around me like prison walls. The house showings were next week. Strangers walking through my bedroom, my kitchen, the bathroom where Richard used to shave every morning. The guardianship hearing was Friday at 2 p.m. in Judge Henderson's chambers. And in 3 days, they wanted me to sign papers I'd never seen to make David the successor trustee of everything Richard and I had built together. Mail, money, house, all being transferred away from me one signature at a time. 3 deadlines closing in like a vice, and I was running out of air. But here's what Jennifer and David hadn't counted on. Grief might make you stupid about details, but fear makes you smart about survival. And I was starting to get very afraid. If you've ever felt family help shrinking your world until you can barely breathe in it, if you've ever watched people who say they love you treat you like a problem to be solved rather than a person to be respected, then you understand what I was facing. You understand why I couldn't just accept their help anymore, why I couldn't trust their version of what was best for me, why I had to listen to that voice in the back of my head that kept whispering, "This isn't help. This is a hostile takeover." Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones standing closest to your wallet. Sometimes the people who promise to take care of you are really just taking care of themselves. Listen to what I learned about fighting back when you're supposed to be grateful. Because sometimes saying no to family is the most loving thing you can do for yourself. I had 3 days to figure out how to save myself. The next morning, I woke up with a different kind of clarity. Fear has a way of burning through the fog that grief leaves behind. If I was going to fight this, I needed to understand exactly what I was fighting for. I went to Richard's study, the room David and Jennifer had been organizing for weeks. Most of his papers had been moved to boxes in their garage for safekeeping, but I remembered something they didn't know about. Behind his desk, Richard had installed a small wall safe the year before he died. He'd shown me the combination once, making me practice it until I had it memorized. "Emergency money," he'd said, "and important papers, just in case something happens to me before you." I hadn't thought about that safe since the funeral, hadn't even wanted to go into his study, where his reading glasses still sat on the desk next to a book he'd never finish. But desperation makes you brave in ways grief never can. The safe was exactly where he'd left it, hidden behind a framed photo of our wedding day, the same photo Jennifer had suggested I put away because it was too emotional for potential buyers. I turned the dial with shaking fingers. His birthday, then mine, then our anniversary. The lock clicked open. Inside were cash, our passports, and a thick manila envelope marked "Trust Documents, Original Copies" in Richard's careful handwriting. My hands were shaking as I pulled out the papers. Richard had established a family trust 3 years ago when his doctor found the first signs of heart disease. I remembered signing papers in the lawyer's office, but I'd let Richard handle all the details because numbers and legal language had always been his strength. Now, reading through page after page of legal terminology, I began to understand exactly how carefully my husband had planned for this moment, how he'd tried to protect me even after he was gone. The trust was irrevocable. Richard was the original trustee, and upon his death, I became the sole trustee with complete control over all assets. The house, the bank accounts, the investments, even his life insurance payout. Everything was protected under the trust, which meant no one could force me to sell or transfer anything without my explicit written consent. Not David, not Jennifer, not even a court-appointed guardian. But the most important part was Section 12, which I read 3 times to make sure I understood it correctly. The successor trustee position can only be filled upon the death or documented incapacity of the current trustee, and only by the person specifically named in this document. I flipped to the signature page. The successor trustee was listed as Margaret Patterson, Richard's sister who lived in Oregon. Not David, not Jennifer, Margaret. Richard's signature was still guarding me from the grave. I sat on the floor of his study, surrounded by legal documents that proved everything Jennifer and David had told me was a lie. They had no legal right to become successor trustees. They had no authority to sell the house. The trust protected me from exactly the kind of financial exploitation they were attempting. But having the truth in my hands and being able to use it were 2 different things. I called the law office that had prepared the trust documents. The receptionist transferred me to Mr. Harrison, the estate attorney who'd worked with Richard. Mr. Harrison, this is Margaret Morrison. My husband Richard died in November, and I have questions about our family trust. Mrs. Morrison, yes, I'm sorry for your loss. Your son David called last week about this matter. He was concerned about your ability to manage the trust responsibilities. Said you'd been having cognitive difficulties since your husband's death. My blood went cold. What did you tell him? Well, Mrs. Morrison, these are complex family dynamics. If there are legitimate concerns about your capacity, we might need to consider what's best for everyone involved. David had poisoned the well before I'd even known there was a problem. Mr. Harrison, I'm completely competent to manage the trust. David and his wife have been trying to manipulate me into signing over control. I'm sure that's not their intention. Family members often disagree during times of grief. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting with all parties present. I want to discuss my legal rights privately. Given the concerns David raised about your emotional state, I think it would be best to include him in any discussions. They'd gotten to my lawyer before I could. I hung up, feeling more isolated than ever. The one person who should have been advocating for my legal rights was already convinced I needed protection for myself. But I still had the original trust documents. I still had proof. I just needed someone to verify their authenticity and help me enforce them. I drove back to First National Bank, hoping to speak with the branch manager about the fraudulent power of attorney Jennifer had somehow established. If I could prove the trust gave me sole authority over the accounts, maybe they'd lift the restrictions. Margaret Chen, the branch manager, agreed to meet with me in her office. I'd known Margaret for years. She'd helped us set up our accounts, processed our mortgage. I spread the trust documents across her desk, pointing to the section that established my authority as sole trustee. These documents show I'm the sole trustee of the family trust that controls these accounts. I never authorized Jennifer Morrison to act as my power of attorney. Margaret reviewed the papers carefully. Mrs. Morrison, I can see these appear to be legitimate trust documents, but to make changes to the account authorizations, I'll need certified copies from the attorney's office, notarized affidavits confirming your identity and mental competency, and legal documentation that these supersede existing power of attorney arrangements. How do I get those? You'll need to work with your estate attorney to prepare the proper documentation. The bank can't accept originals without proper legal certification for changes this significant. It's federal banking law. Oh, but I can't get my attorney to meet with me privately. He insists on including my son. Margaret's expression grew uncomfortable. Mrs. Morrison, I understand this is difficult, but the bank's hands are tied until we receive proper legal documentation through official channels. I'd recommend finding a different attorney. I owned the accounts but couldn't prove it. I had the legal documents but couldn't get them certified. I had the truth but no way to make it official. Every path forward seemed to require cooperation from the very people who were blocking me. But as I sat in my car outside the bank, staring at Richard's trust documents, I realized something important. David and Jennifer didn't know I'd found these papers. They thought they were the only ones who understood the legal situation. They had no idea I now knew exactly what they were trying to steal. Sometimes the best weapon is the one your enemy doesn't know you have. I had 2 days left before the Monday signing appointment. 2 days to gather proof that David and Jennifer weren't just manipulating me. They were committing fraud. The problem was, most of the evidence I needed was inside my own house, in filing cabinets they'd been organizing for weeks. They'd moved most of my important documents to their garage, but I knew they'd missed something. Saturday morning, Jennifer announced they were driving to David's cousin's wedding in Albany. 3 hours away, reception until evening. "Are you sure you'll be all right alone?" Jennifer asked with fake concern. "I'll be fine. I might just rest." The moment their car left the driveway, I started searching. I went through my own house like a burglar, opening drawers and cabinets that had been in my kitchen, my bedroom, my study for decades. But everything felt different now, organized in ways I didn't recognize. Files moved, papers sorted into Jennifer's neat system instead of my comfortable chaos. In the kitchen desk, where I used to keep bills and warranties, I found a folder labeled Margaret's Financial Documents. My own name written in Jennifer's precise handwriting, like I was a client instead of the homeowner. Inside were photocopies of bank statements, but not the originals. And the statements only went back 3 months, nothing from before they'd started their systematic takeover. But at the bottom of the folder, underneath a stack of utility bills, I found something they probably thought was unimportant. A carbon copy of a notary form from February 18th, a signature verification for power of attorney modification and account management authorization. The signature looked like mine, but the pen strokes were too careful, too studied. I'd never signed any such document. I didn't even remember seeing a notary in February. I photographed the document with my phone, zooming in on the signature and the notary's stamp. The notary's name was Linda Chen, no relation to Margaret at the bank, with an address in downtown Sacramento and a license number that I made sure to capture clearly. In David's old bedroom, which they were using as their temporary office, I found more evidence. Jennifer had left her laptop open to a spreadsheet titled Asset Transfer Timeline. The dates were all there: February 15th, bank accounts switched to paperless; February 18th, POA authorization completed March 1, mail forwarding initiated March 15th, house listing target date April 1st, asset liquidation begins. They'd planned this for months. Every helpful gesture had been a calculated step in their timeline. I was photographing the computer screen when I heard David's key in the front door. They weren't supposed to be back for hours. My heart hammered as I closed the laptop and arranged everything exactly as I'd found it. Heavy footsteps in the hallway. I slipped into the master bedroom and sat on the bed, picking up a magazine, trying to look like I'd been reading peacefully. "Mom," David called. "We're back early." Jennifer forgot her earrings. "I'm in here." Jennifer appeared in the doorway, studying my face. "You look flushed. Are you feeling all right?" "Just warm." I was napping. She walked to her jewelry box, but I could feel her watching me in the mirror. "Were you up and around much today?" "Just to the kitchen for tea." "I thought I heard you moving around upstairs when we pulled in." But Jennifer's eyes were scanning the room, looking for something out of place. She knew. 20 minutes later, they left again for Albany. But this time, I noticed David checking the locks on the filing cabinet in his room. This time, Jennifer repositioned some papers on the kitchen desk before leaving. They were marking their territory, setting traps to see if I'd moved anything while they were gone. I was burglarizing my own filing cabinet, and now they knew it. That afternoon, I called directory assistance for estate attorneys in Sacramento. I needed someone who hadn't already been poisoned against me by David's lies. The third lawyer I called, Patricia Williams, agreed to see me Monday morning, ironically the same day as David's signing appointment. "Mrs. Williams, I need help proving that my son and daughter-in-law have been forging documents to gain control of my finances. I have a family trust that protects my assets, but my original attorney won't meet with me privately." "That's concerning, Mrs. Morrison. Can you bring the original trust documents to our meeting?" "I have them, but I also need you to help me verify some suspicious notary work and possible signature forgery." "Absolutely. Bring everything you have. If there's fraud involved, we'll need to document it properly and possibly involve law enforcement. Law enforcement. The words sent a chill of hope through me. Mrs. Williams, the appointment is Monday at 9 a.m., but my son is expecting me to sign papers at 10 a.m. that would make him successor trustee. I need to know my legal rights before. The call ended, mid-sentence, like someone had cut the wire. I looked at my phone. Call failed. I tried calling back immediately. The line was busy. I tried her office number again, still busy. I tried calling my neighbor Ruth to test the phone. Same thing, the call cut off after 2 rings, then showed call failed on the screen. But my phone was working fine for incoming calls. I could call the bank, the grocery store, the doctor's office without any problems. But every time I tried to call an attorney, a legal aid service, or anyone who might help me fight this situation, the call mysteriously failed. They'd found a way to control my communication. Jennifer was monitoring my phone calls now, and somehow blocking the ones they didn't want me to make. Sunday morning, I drove back to First National Bank. Margaret Chen agreed to meet with me one more time. I spread everything across her desk. The trust documents, the forged notary form, photos of Jennifer's timeline, the documented account changes. Margaret studied everything carefully. Mrs. Morrison, this is definitely suspicious. The notary signature doesn't match our signature cards. The timeline suggests systematic planning, and the power of attorney documentation doesn't include required witness signatures. So you can reverse the restrictions? I can flag this for fraud investigation, but Mrs. Morrison, this kind of investigation takes weeks. The bank can't make changes until we get official legal clearance. I don't have weeks. Tomorrow they want me to sign successor trustee papers. Then you need legal representation before that appointment. I had the evidence scattered across Margaret's desk like pieces of a puzzle that finally made sense. I had the bank's growing concern and a fraud investigation starting. I had documentation of forgery, systematic financial manipulation, and communication monitoring. But I still couldn't access my own money. And I still couldn't reach an attorney who could take immediate action to stop tomorrow's appointment. Time was running out, and David and Jennifer were moving faster than the legal system could respond. I had proof they were stealing from me, but I couldn't use it fast enough to stop them. Sometimes having all the right answers doesn't matter if you can't get anyone to listen in time. Monday morning at 7 a.m., Patricia Williams called. Mrs. Morrison, this is Patricia Williams. I've been reviewing concerning information about your case. I received a call from Margaret Chen at First National Bank. She flagged your situation as potential elder financial abuse. An attorney, finally. Can you meet before 10 a.m.? I have a better idea. I'm going to attend that signing appointment uninvited. The best time to stop fraud is when they're committing it. At 9:30, David and Jennifer arrived with a tall, gray-haired man carrying an expensive briefcase. Mom, this is Robert Kemp, the notary. He'll witness your signature on the successor trustee documents. Jennifer set a folder on the table. The top page read, Assignment of Successor Trustee Responsibilities, Margaret Morrison Family Trust. This is just a formality, David said. Since you've been having trouble with paperwork, this transfers administrative responsibilities to me. I sat down and pretended to read. The language was dense, but I could see what it meant. Complete control over the trust assets. David could sell everything, and I would have no legal recourse. Where do I sign? I asked, picking up the pen. That's when the doorbell rang. Are you expecting someone? Jennifer asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. No, I said truthfully, but I should answer it. Patricia Williams stood on my front porch wearing a navy blue suit. and carrying a briefcase that matched her no-nonsense expression. Behind her stood a man in a sheriff's uniform. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm Patricia Williams, your attorney. This is Deputy Rodriguez. We're here about the fraud investigation." David appeared beside me in the doorway. "Mom doesn't have an attorney." "And what fraud investigation?" "Mr. Morrison, I presume?" Patricia said, extending her hand. "I represent your mother regarding the illegal financial manipulation you and your wife have been perpetrating against her trust assets." "There's been some misunderstanding," Jennifer said, joining us at the door. "We're just helping Mom with some paperwork." "No misunderstanding," Patricia said calmly. "Mrs. Morrison, may we come in? I believe you have a signing appointment that needs to be interrupted." I stepped aside to let them enter. David and Jennifer had no choice but to follow, as Patricia Williams walked into my kitchen like she owned the place. She surveyed the scene, the notary, the papers spread across the table. David and Jennifer positioned on either side of my chair like guards. "Gentlemen," Patricia announced, "this signing cannot proceed. Mrs. Morrison, please step away from that table." "Now wait just a minute," Robert Kemp said, standing up from his chair. "I'm a licensed notary, and these appear to be legitimate trust documents. Mr. Kemp, I'm going to save you from participating in a felony." Patricia opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "These are the original trust documents for the Morrison Family Trust. Mrs. Morrison is the sole trustee and has never authorized any successor trustee designation." She walked to my kitchen table and set her folder down right next to the mashed potatoes from last night's dinner that Jennifer had insisted on reheating for a family meal atmosphere. "Furthermore," she continued, opening the folder, "Mrs. Morrison has evidence that Mr. Morrison and his wife have been systematically defrauding her accounts through forged power of attorney documents." I watched David's face go pale. Jennifer took a step backward. "That's ridiculous," Jennifer said, but her voice had lost its confidence. "We have legal authorization for all of our financial assistance." "Do you?" Patricia pulled out the carbon copy of the notary form I'd found. "This signature authorization from February 18th. Mrs. Morrison, is this your signature?" I looked at the document. The signature that had fooled the bank, that had given them control over my accounts. "No, that's not my signature." "Mrs. Morrison has never met Linda Chen, the notary listed on this document. In fact, Mrs. Morrison was at her doctor's appointment on February 18th, as confirmed by medical records, at the exact time this document was allegedly signed." Robert Kemp was gathering his papers. "I think I should leave." "Mr. Kemp, you might want to stay," Deputy Rodriguez said. "You're about to witness some evidence that could be relevant to criminal charges." Patricia spread bank statements across my kitchen table like she was dealing cards. Months of account activity that Jennifer had kept hidden from me. "These are Mrs. Morrison's bank statements for the past 6 months. Note the withdrawal patterns. 47 unauthorized withdrawals totaling over $12,000. And here," she pointed to a line item, "a transfer of $15,000 to an account belonging to Jennifer Morrison." Jennifer was backing toward the door. "Those were reimbursements for expenses we covered." "What expenses?" Patricia asked. "Because Mrs. Morrison's trust has been paying all household expenses directly." "What exactly were you being reimbursed for?" Silence. "And here's my favorite part," Patricia continued, pulling out another document. "A home equity loan application filed last month using Mrs. Morrison's house as collateral for $230,000 without her knowledge or consent." I stared at the application. My house. They'd been planning to mortgage my house. "We were trying to get a loan to help Mom with home improvements," David said weakly. Mr. Morrison, your mother owns her home free and clear. She has no debt and plenty of liquid assets in her trust. Why would she need a home equity loan for improvements she never requested? David opened his mouth, then closed it. No answer. Let me guess, Patricia continued. You needed cash quickly? Maybe some debts of your own? Some investments that didn't pan out? And your mother's house looked like an easy solution. The ink was still drying on my stolen signature at the bottom of that loan application. Mrs. Morrison, Patricia said, turning to me with respect I hadn't heard in months. These people have committed multiple felonies against you. Bank fraud, forgery, identity theft, and elder financial abuse under California Penal Code. Section 368. Deputy Rodriguez is prepared to take statements and begin criminal proceedings immediately if you choose to press charges. I looked around my kitchen table, David staring at his hands, Jennifer backing toward the door like a trapped animal, the notary frantically packing his briefcase, the deputy taking notes, the same table where Richard and I had shared morning coffee for 20 years, where David had done his homework. Now it was covered with evidence of their betrayal, scattered like bones from a feast they'd been planning to finish without me. The criminal investigation moved faster than I expected. Within a week, Patricia Williams had filed restraining orders preventing David and Jennifer from accessing my financial accounts or entering my house without supervision. The district attorney had formal fraud charges ready within 2 weeks, but the real consequences started showing themselves much sooner. 3 days after the kitchen table confrontation, David called from a number I didn't recognize. Mom, we need to talk. All communication goes through my attorney now. Please, 5 minutes. It's about Jennifer. Against Patricia's advice, I agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown. David looked like he'd aged 5 years in 5 days. Rumpled clothes, dark circles under his eyes. Jennifer left, packed Tuesday night, drove to her sister's in Phoenix. Filed for divorce yesterday. I felt relief and sadness. Relief that she was gone. Sadness for what this meant for David. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. She cleaned out our joint accounts before she left. Took everything we had saved, plus money that wasn't really ours. Money you stole from me. He flinched. Yes, she said if she was going down for fraud, she wasn't going down broke. David stared into his coffee cup, like it might have answers. We're going to lose the house, Mom. I can't make mortgage payments without the money from your accounts. With criminal charges, I can't get another loan. How long were you planning this? Since Dad's diagnosis, Jennifer said we needed inheritance planning, make sure money stayed in the family instead of going to nursing home costs. So you decided to take it while I was still alive. We thought you wouldn't mind. You seemed grateful for our help. Jennifer said we were protecting your assets from scam artists. The irony was stunning. They were protecting my money by becoming scam artists themselves. Jennifer had it all mapped out, David continued. Get financial control during grief, gradually transition assets, eventually move you to assisted living. She said older people prefer having family handle complicated finances. Did you consider asking what I preferred? He looked up from his coffee, finally meeting my eyes. Honestly, no. Jennifer was so confident about the plan. She made it sound responsible, loving. David, you forged my signature 47 times, stole $12,000, tried to mortgage my house without my knowledge. How did that feel loving? It didn't, toward the end. But we were in so deep, and Jennifer said if we stopped halfway, we'd be arrested anyway. She said we had to finish or go to jail. Desperation had made them sloppy, and sloppy had made them caught. But hearing David talk about it now, I realized Jennifer had been the mastermind. David had been a willing participant, but she'd been the architect. What happens now? My lawyer says probation if I cooperate with restitution. Pay back everything, provide documentation, testify if needed. Jennifer's facing serious charges for the forged notary documents. And your charges? Elder financial abuse is a felony, even with cooperation, possible jail time. Definitely a criminal record. Loss of my teaching license. David had taught high school math for 15 years. Coached debate team, sponsored chess club, all gone now. I'm sorry it came to this. Are you? Because maybe we could work something out. Family mediation instead of criminal court. I could pay you back, help around the house. No. The word came out hard but clear. David, you spent months systematically erasing me from my own life. You convinced me I was incompetent, isolated me from my friends, stole my mail, monitored my phone calls. You made me doubt my own memory and judgment. That's not something you recover from with a payment plan. But I'm your son. Yes, you're my son who committed felonies against me. You're my son who was planning to put me in a nursing home so you could steal my house. Being family doesn't erase that, David. It makes it worse. We sat in silence for several minutes. Other customers came and went, ordering their normal lives while our family disintegrated. So what does this mean for us? David asked finally. Patricia Williams had helped me draft clear boundaries. Supervised visits only, with a neutral third party present. No access to my home without prior arrangement and legal supervision. No discussion of financial matters. Any gifts or assistance documented through official channels. Love had become a scheduled appointment with conditions. It means we have to start over, I said. Maybe someday we can rebuild some kind of relationship. But it will be different. It will have boundaries. And it will take time. How much time? I don't know. Years, maybe. That depends on you. Whether you take responsibility, whether you get help, whether you prove you understand what you did wrong. I understand now. Understanding and acknowledging are different things, David. Understanding is intellectual. Acknowledging means accepting consequences without making excuses. He nodded, but I could see him still processing, still trying to find ways to minimize what had happened. The court-ordered supervision would protect both of us. Me from further manipulation, him from temptation to try again. Sometimes love means building walls instead of tearing them down. 6 months later, I had built a different kind of life. Not the life I'd planned with Richard, and certainly not the life David and Jennifer had mapped out, but something entirely my own. I hired Maria Santos twice a week. She helped with grocery shopping and heavier cleaning, but worked for me, not around me. When I wanted to reorganize the linen closet, we did it my way. I hired assistants. I didn't accept dominance. The difference was profound. Maria asked what I wanted for dinner instead of telling me what was good for me. She handed me my mail instead of sorting through it first. Mrs. Patterson from next door stopped by afternoons for coffee, not because anyone assigned her to check on me, but because we both missed having someone to talk through small happenings. She brought tomatoes. I shared Richard's banana bread recipe. These were relationships built on choice rather than obligation. My daily routine became my own again. I woke when my body felt ready, paid bills at Richard's desk, opened windows as I pleased. Bank statements arrived in my name, with my signature controlling every transaction. The freedom was intoxicating at first. After months of filtered decisions, choosing my own breakfast felt revolutionary. But gradually, that hyper-awareness settled into peace. I still kept Patricia Williams on retainer and the trust documents in Richard's safe, but I didn't think about them every day anymore. The paperwork was there if needed, but it wasn't the center of my existence. David and I had supervised visits once monthly. 45 minutes of careful conversation with a therapist present. He was making progress, paying restitution, rebuilding his life. But I wasn't waiting for him to heal before I could live. I was living now, in quiet spaces between crises, in ordinary moments that belonged entirely to me. This was what safety felt like. Not the absence of risk, but the presence of my own choices. Some days, I missed the version of David who used to call with funny stories. Most days, I was grateful for silence that meant no one was planning my life without asking me first. David's restitution payments arrive monthly. We haven't progressed beyond supervised visits, and I'm not sure we ever will. Some relationships can't be repaired, only redefined. Some trust, once broken, stays broken. I've learned that strength sometimes looks like saying no to family. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's worst impulses, even when that someone is your own child. Here's what I want you to remember. Grief makes you vulnerable in ways you never expect. It makes you grateful for help you wouldn't normally accept, doubt your judgment when you need it most. People who want to take advantage know this, but being vulnerable doesn't mean being powerless. Being grateful doesn't mean giving up control. And needing help doesn't mean accepting any help that's offered. If grief has ever made you feel invisible in your own life, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments. Sometimes our experiences can light the way for someone else who's lost in the dark.